Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the most chilling double lives in modern criminal history. We're talking about the mask versus the monster, and looking closely at exactly why Dennis Rader killed 10 innocent people. We're going to unpack how a seemingly perfect family man managed to hide a terrifying 30-year secret from his community, his friends, and literally his own family. Let's get right into it.
So to really set the stage here, you have to picture this mask he wore. It's 2005 in Wichita, Kansas. When police arrested a 59-year-old guy named Dennis Rader, the entire community was just in absolute shock. I mean, from the outside looking in, he was the literal definition of an ordinary, upstanding suburban dad. He had a wife, 2 kids, he was always at church, he was even the president of his church council, and a Boy Scout leader. But behind all of that was a complete monster. He was actually the infamous BTK killer, hiding a 30-year reign of terror. And that brings us to the core mystery we really need to unravel today. How exactly does a normal churchgoer, a guy sitting right there in the pews, turn into a ruthless killer the second the sun goes down? How did he pull off evading the police for 3 decades? And most importantly, what were the deeply disturbed psychological motivations that actually drove him to do this? Section 1. College Obsession, Early Dark Fantasies.
To figure out why he killed, we've got to rewind a bit. Rader was born in 1945, and honestly, by all accounts, his childhood was completely ordinary. No glaring red flags. He grew up, served in the Air Force, and then, ironically enough, got a job installing home security alarms. He was literally setting up systems meant to keep people just like him out of houses. He got married in 1974 and started his family. Everything looked perfect. But behind closed doors, he had this deeply disturbed secret obsession that dated all the way back to his college days. He was entirely fixated on fantasies of binding women. He'd actually cut out pictures from magazines and tie them up, and even bought mannequins into his house to physically practice these sick fantasies in private. The seeds for everything that happened later were planted right there. Section 2. Bind, Torture, Kill. The 30-Year Nightmare. This nightmare officially spilled over into reality on January 15, 1974. That night, he broke into a home and brutally murdered the Otero family, a mom, a dad, and their 2 kids. He bound them, took their lives, and managed to leave the police with absolutely zero evidence. And this horrific spree just kept going, stretching from that first night in '74 all the way through 1991, followed by a really long pause before his shocking arrest in 2005.
Over this massive stretch of time, he claimed 10 lives. But looking at why Dennis Rader killed 10 specifically, it's not just a random number. It shows a highly methodical, controlled compulsion that he deliberately spread out over decades. He did this to satisfy his urges while staying totally under the radar. After the Otero family, he murdered 9 more people, mostly women who were alone. And in this incredibly unsettling pattern, he would carefully steal a personal item from the victim's home every single time to keep as a twisted little trophy. Now you might think just committing these terrible crimes would be enough to satisfy him, right? No way. The guy craved notoriety. He actually came up with his own terrifying brand to make absolutely sure the world knew how he operated. He named himself BTK, which stood for exactly what he did: bind, torture, kill. Section 3. Driven by pure ego, craving notoriety. That nickname really exposes the true driving force here. Yes, he had dark obsessions, but they were fueled by this massive, insatiable ego. He desperately needed the media and the police to pay attention to him. He didn't just want to kill, he wanted to play God. He started writing these highly detailed letters to the police, relentlessly mocking them for not being able to catch him, and basically just reveling in the public panic he was causing. His ego completely demanded an audience. But, despite all this taunting, the police were totally stuck. For almost 30 years, they had zero actionable evidence. The trail went completely cold. It became this legendary cold case. And as the decades rolled by, everyone pretty much assumed the BTK killer had died or was sitting in a prison cell for some other random crime. But an ego that size doesn't just stay quiet forever. Section 4. Fatal Floppy Disk. The Ego Trap. Fast forward to 2004, and suddenly the letters start showing up again. Rader was back. His ego woke up, but his absolute need to be relevant again led to a massive blunder. He wanted to use modern tech, so he actually reached out and asked the police if a floppy disk could be digitally traced.
The police saw their opening and just flat out lied. They announced publicly, nope, totally untraceable. Feeling super confident, Rader actually sent them a floppy disk. The second they got it, they plugged it in and immediately extracted the hidden digital metadata.
And right there, buried in the metadata of this innocent-looking document, were two huge, glaring clues. It explicitly linked the file to the Christ Lutheran Church and a computer user named Dennis.
Armed with this incredible digital fingerprint, the authorities didn't waste a single second. They marched straight over to the Christ Lutheran Church. And guess what they find out? The president of their church council is a man named Dennis Rader. It all instantly clicked. On February 25, 2005, police showed up at his house, and the notorious BTK killer was finally, shockingly, under arrest.
Section 5. Monster in plain sight. Hiding among us.
So the mask is finally off. When Rader was standing in court, the judge asked him point-blank why he committed these horrific acts for 30 years, and his answer just had zero humanity or remorse. He just coldly looked at the court and said, "I enjoyed it. It was a project for me." Today, he's locked away serving a life sentence. And when you step back and look at this whole explainer, it's wild to think about how this actually ended. He wasn't caught because of some tiny fiber or forensic evidence left at a crime scene back in the 70s. He got away with it for 30 years. He was caught purely because his massive, fragile ego demanded to be seen. He just couldn't stand being forgotten. And that is what finally brought him down. Which brings us to a really unsettling final thought to take away from this explainer today. The story of Dennis Rader proves that real-world monsters don't actually come with horns. They don't look like movie villains. They hide right there in plain sight. They live in your neighborhood, they go to your church, they might even be leading your local scout troop. It really forces us to ask, who is actually hiding behind the mask of the ordinary people